Bonjour tout le monde. Il y a 3 ans aujourd'hui, la Russie a lancé une invasion massive et illégale ici en Ukraine. Ils voulaient occuper Kyiv en 3 jours, ils voulaient prendre tout le pays en 3 semaines. Évidemment, 3 ans plus tard, on est toujours ici et aujourd'hui, on a eu non seulement de très bonnes discussions avec les Ukrainiens et des partenaires européens, mais on a présidé sur une rencontre virtuelle, hybride même, du G7 pour parler de l'Ukraine, pour parler de l'avenir, pour parler de la paix. 3 years ago today, Russia launched a massive full-scale invasion of Ukraine, hoping to occupy Kyiv in 3 days, hoping to occupy the entire country in 3 weeks. Russia failed. Ukraine still stands 3 years later and is fighting stronger than ever. Today we gather on this anniversary European partners, partners from around the world to talk about how important it is to stay strong. And we also hosted, as Canada's presiding the G7 this year, we hosted a hybrid G7 meeting to talk about Ukraine, talk about the path forward, talk about defending the rule of law and the rules-based order.
Prime Minister, can you clarify what you meant when you talked about Canada and security guarantees for Ukraine, particularly the boots on the ground? Do you think we should be here after?
Well, first of all, Canada has been part of standing up for Ukraine from the very beginning. And I don't mean from the beginning of this current 3-year occupation and invasion. I mean from 2015 onwards, subsequent to the occupying of Crimea and parts of the Donbass, Canada started training in Ukraine, Ukrainian armed forces, and have made a significant difference. We will continue to look for ways to engage, but the first priority is to make sure that there is a ceasefire and that we set up the conditions for a lasting peace. When we establish the way we're going to keep a lasting peace, I can tell you, I am certain that Canada will be involved, but we're not at that position yet.
Mais vous dites que, en fait, les options sont ouvertes, donc c'est une possibilité que le Canada, s'il y a une initiative telle que défendue par le président Macron, par le premier ministre en œuvre, décide de faire partie d'une force de maintien de la paix.
Oui, c'est absolument possible, parce que le Canada sera là pour l'Ukraine, parce que défendre l'Ukraine, c'est pas juste défendre le territoire ukrainien ou la souveraineté ukrainienne, c'est de défendre les principes et les valeurs qui soutiennent toutes nos démocraties. Si Vladimir Poutine gagne ici en Ukraine, il met à risque toutes nos démocraties, toutes les démocraties dans le monde.
His comments seem like something you didn't think about. You thought long and hard about what they're saying.
Sorry, what's your question?
On the ground, and was it a difficult decision to make this comment on your last trip?
Over the past 9.5 years, I've discovered that one of the most important and difficult decisions any Prime Minister can make is about deploying the men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces. Whether it was our decision to lead the Enhanced Battle Group in Latvia, whether it's the missions we had in northern Iraq, whether it's any deployment of the Canadian Armed Forces, it is something to take very, very seriously. The women and men who serve our country serve to defend not just Canada, but the values that Canada stands for. And being there to defend the principles of democracy, being there to ensure that the forces of chaos that Vladimir Putin is trying to unleash on the world to undermine all of our democracies, there is a role for Canada. What that role will be and how engaged we will be something to determine as things unfold. But it is the easiest thing in the world to continue to say what I have said from the very beginning, which is Canada stands with Ukraine and always will.
I guess it's also relevant about what role the United States will have. They weren't here. The new German Chancellor is already talking about something to replace NATO. That's pretty extreme. What do you think of that?
I think what we did see today, including in the conversation with the President of the United States during the G7, is there is a strong unity around the G7, around knowing that this unjust war needs to end, and about knowing that we have to work on establishing a lasting peace here in Ukraine, where Ukrainians can be sovereign and independent and confident about their future. There are lots of conversations about how best to get there, and those conversations will continue. They were happening during our G7 meeting today. They're happening right now in Washington as President Macron is meeting with Donald Trump. They will continue on Thursday when Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the UK, is meeting with Donald Trump. It'll happen next week at the European Council as European members and NATO members gather to talk about the path forward. These conversations are ongoing, but they are happening around one core facet, that Russia cannot succeed in destabilizing the rules that keep us all safe and prosperous, not just in Europe, but all around the world.
Last question.
Prime Minister, it's your last trip to Ukraine as Prime Minister of Canada. Do you believe yourself, your government has done enough over these last 3 years to help Ukraine find a path?
This is my fifth trip to Ukraine as Prime Minister, my fourth since the war began. And the thing that is clear to me is that Canadians continue to stand strong with Ukraine, and Ukrainians appreciate deeply the unequivocal support that Canada has and will always deliver. The war is not over yet. We will continue to stand with Ukraine until the war is over and until Ukraine wins. It is very much my hope that this war won't last another year. But I know that Canadians will be expecting whoever succeeds me to continue to stand strong in standing up not just for our Ukrainian friends, but again for the values and principles that underpin our democracy and democracies like it around the world. Merci beaucoup à tout le monde. Oui.
Êtes-vous d'accord avec ce que l'ancien ministre des Affaires étrangères, Lloyd Axworthy, a écrit il y a quelques jours en disant que l'Ukraine, pour les Canadiens, devrait servir d'un avertissement très sérieux de ce qui peut se passer avec un voisin qui est très puissant? Quand vous dites « might does not mean right », est-ce que vous pensez aussi à Donald Trump et pas qu'à Vladimir Poutine?
Écoutez, les valeurs et l'histoire qui rassemble et qui unit les Américains et les Canadiens sont plus grands, plus profonds que qui est en charge de nos deux pays à un moment donné. On est des partenaires, on est les amis avec les Américains. Il va y avoir des différences sur le commerce et sur différentes choses, c'est certain. Mais on va toujours être là les uns pour les autres et ça va durer pour l'avenir. Merci. Merci tout le monde.